I'm Jess,
And I'm Wes,
and we are the
the
Ontario
Ontario
Wildmen.
Wildmen.
On this show, we travel back and revisit the significant moments, the heroes, the villains, the legends, and all things pro wrestling in Ontario, Canada. Again, I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
I'm here with my buddy Wes, a man who studied and researched Ontario wrestling history for over 30 years. Brother, we're back. Episode 4. Man, things keep on growing for us. Our members in Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past on Facebook are up. Members on the Wildman tribute page are up. Our followers on Twitter at Wildman Podcast are up. Our t-shirts on PROWRESTLINGTEES.com. Our audience is growing. Wes, we're back again, coming off our most successful episode to date.
Isn't it? It's so exciting, Jesse. It's unbelievable to be having so much fun and reaching out to so many people on the Dave Dynasty network. Yet it just doesn't seem to stop. It wants to keep rolling, and I'm so excited. It's fantastic. Loud and clear, baby. Loud and clear.
Yeah, man, we're on the path of positivity for the Ontario Wildmen. I just want to thank all the listeners for last month's episode and all the previous episodes, all the fans of our show. Again, we try our best to bring the best content to you guys. We're very proud to be Canadian content and pumping out the history of Ontario wrestling.
It's going to be never ending. We could do this for the rest of our days, Jesse. Ontario wrestling history goes back 100 years, easy, and then thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of cards over the years. We could do this until the cows come home, for sure.
Yeah, last month we talked about the big event. It was fun to talk about. Are you still upset about the whole Funks thing or what?
I'm beginning to really look at some things with a different eye. Jesse, you really taught me something about not being so negative about some of the past. We just can't pretend that the 50s wrestling was all fantastic and the Attitude Era or whatever was crap. It wasn't crap. It was just not necessarily for me. But and we'll get into this a little bit further when we talk about what we've been watching. I am looking at things in a different aspect and different eye. So I appreciate your pushing me to look at other things and newer things to me. And it's really exciting. We have to stay on top as much as we can.
Wes, if there's anything I do best, it's staying on top, bud. Yeah, well, like your struggles with technology, you struggle with modern wrestling, buddy, but it's okay. Well, I'll get you there. Don't worry.
we're working on it slowly and surely. I still don't know what AEW stands for, but that's okay.
Oh my God. Wes, you're all moved in.
We're all moved in. We're all excited. We're at 60 Captain Kennedy. That's the name of our new street. It's a
Captain Kennedy?
Yeah, it's a really cool street. I'm so
What a gimmick.
It is a gimmick. It's got a really cool history story to it, so that's cool. I'm just with my wife. We're just setting up our house, and I'm going to be setting up my wrestling room. So by the time the next podcast rolls around, I'm going to have everything at my hands.
Hopefully, because I'm dying to see some of the stuff that I haven't seen yet and haven't seen all the stuff that you packed when I first met you.
Exactly. A ton of stuff that just was already packed when we had originally even met. So very exciting to be moved in, very exciting to be moving on also. And you know what's been fantastic? Your thoughts and your pictures on shows opening up in Ontario. Tell us a bit about that, Jesse.
Yeah, I had a great time at Pro Wrestling Eclipse. The Alpha 1 show, I was still iffy about making it. Because of the rain, because it's going to rain, and I was like, so, I mean, I wish I could have made it, but I just don't think I could have. It's an outdoor event raining with my daughter. I couldn't have made it.
No.
But Pro Wrestling Eclipse, Oshawa, Ontario. The guy goes by Dr. Mask. I had a great time. My daughter, though, is only 3, as you know. And she was kind of like, what's going on? It's all new to her, and she didn't know what was going on and who was who. But it's fun to see her like with the kids clapping her hands and hearing the chanting and booing. And I told somebody he sucked, and she's like, Daddy, why'd you do that? I said, no, you can do that here. It's okay to do that here. I'm like, he's a bad guy. You're supposed to tell him that kind of stuff. It's amazing to see on the other side of things, like us being males and having male friends that are fans of wrestling. We don't really get to see the girl side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And with my daughter, I got to see the girl side of things for the first time, and how she was obsessed with the girl wrestler there. That her name was Nova, or she was known as Andrea Benoit too. She was there, and my daughter loved her. She wanted to meet her. First, she was a little shy, and then she warmed up, and then, which is kind of cool to see, like, oh my God, like she has her first favorite wrestler is a girl wrestler. And when we went back to our seats, she kept asking about the girl. Where'd the girl go? Where's the girl, Daddy? Where's the girl? Where's the girl? I want to see the girl. Is the girl going to hit the boy in the face? I'm like, yeah, well, she might, hon. I don't know. But yeah, man, it was a great time, and I can't wait to take her again because she has to go again. She really liked it.
That's good.
It was a little late. Like I mean, I got home at 9:45 p.m. But I mean, she lasted quite longer than I expected, and she seemed to love it. So, speaking of loving it, you got the package I sent you?
I did. I got the big box that you sent to me. We shared some love with some of our other collector friends, and it was so strange to see something that I had bought come in a box for me in 2021 that I had bought in 1985. So that's 36 years ago, with my first address on when I got married. So that was pretty neat. Some of the stuff was cool. Some of the stuff was amazing. And shout out to AC. And some of the stuff was just plain so cool to see after all these years. The newsletters and the sheets, when we're going to be getting into that a little bit later in some of our other podcasts with our branding, but it's just so exciting to see old stuff. So neat. What did you think of some of that stuff that you got?
Yeah, like huge shout out to AC for that because he hooked it up. Your advice though on the mat, like I love the mat results because I get to see who was where, and that's what I like the most. I think when I do a lot of research, I'm tracking certain wrestlers now.
Yep.
And your advice on the stamps, if anybody listening is a history guy and you get mat results and you don't know the year because they don't show the year, Wes told me one simple thing: look at the stamp. And I was like, oh my God. And ever since then, man, it's been cool though, because, I'm tracking Andre and Hogan and a couple other guys, right? But it's cool to see in 84 and 85, the years I've been doing lately, Vince McMahon ran 2 shows a night. Hogan on one, Andre on another. So I'm like, and then to see like who was in Mid-South, who was in, who was in St. Louis, who was here, and what territory was still alive, and AWA guys, and it was awesome, man. I'm enjoying going through all this stuff, especially like the Terry Justice stuff. That stuff is amazing.
It's the coolest stuff ever. The sheets, I love the sheets. I love the mat results. Bob Clausen, I think, put it out for a while, and I think Greg Grog, one of our good friends for our pages, put out a couple of newsletters too. But it's just so neat to see Terry Justice stuff because you can actually see the clippings, and I'm a big clipping guy. You can see the clippings from all over the North America, and you see, say, for example, let's pick a Johnny Valentine in the 70s. He's traveling all over the place. He was traveling in St. Louis, Texas, Florida, the Mid-Atlantic, and he was working for Pedro Morales in Toronto, and Pedro Morales in Buffalo, and sometimes in Detroit and in Montreal. He must have been on a plane his whole life for those years. So we can see that when we see these bulletins and the mat results, and it's a great way to see history.
Yeah,
And I'm so happy that you're loving it. Yeah, it's so cool.
Oh, dude, it's so fun. On a personal note, what'd you think of the stuff that I sent of your friend Terry and the Bear Man, the original clippings he had and all that? I gave you it all. I was like, yeah, to me, it belongs to you.
It's some of the stuff I'd never seen before. I know some of the stuff I'd given to Terry and or loaned to him or whatever, and it's come back to me. I don't want to keep it. That's what we're doing here, Jesse, vocally and audio. On audio, we're sharing, and eventually we'll be sharing all sorts of stuff with everybody who wants to get on board with sharing. But it's just great to see stuff come around or stuff you haven't seen for a long time. I'm a lot older than you, so yeah, when I see something I haven't seen that I knew I saw 35 years ago, that's amazing, and it jogs your memory on something you might have forgotten. I know just about everything, but not just about everything.
Yeah. And like I said, a big thing about our show is that you have been researching Ontario wrestling history and you have been studying it and researching it and all that. So you're a well-known historian within the community, in my opinion. I'm a little biased.
Thanks, Matt.
Hey, come on. Anything for more pictures of you in a bull rat bathing suit, buddy. I'm telling you.
They're coming. It's just I got to plug in my old phone for those pictures and the other ones with the mustache, the 70s porn mustache.
Oh, and all your hair or what?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's on my back now.
Oh my God. Well, better than your ass, I guess.
I guess. Pictures of your daughter were great too. I enjoyed that.
Oh yeah.
Nice to see.
Wes, I hate to get a little serious here, man, but seems like a monthly thing that we've been doing here. We've had a couple passings within the wrestling community, and I don't know if you want to take over and talk about that.
You know, I guess every generation loses its heroes, right? Whether it's movie stars or recording stars, sports people. It just seems terrible that this is happening. But on the same note, you know, if we were plugged in 1965, all the guys from the 40s and the 50s would be leaving us, you know, and it's sad. And I guess I'm happy that I met some of these people that are dying, or at least I've seen some of them wrestle, and that was pretty exciting. Bobby Eaton, you know, I don't know much about the guy other than I really liked him. I really, really liked him. He was a real professional. He wasn't huge. He wasn't muscular. He wasn't anything. He was just so talented. I saw him in a scaffold match in Detroit for one of the Great American Bashes, and it was a kind of a silly match because, you know, what are you going to do in a scaffold 20 feet above the ring? But at least I saw him. Sad, and he was young too, you know. Dominic DiNucci passed. I saw him on a Bearman shows. I saw him at the Gardens many times. Funny guy. I talked to him once at one of the Titans dinners, and I joked with him and some other people who were standing there about his match with AWA World's Heavyweight Champion Nick Bockwinkel at Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens. And I said, gee, W, you really had a chance to take the belt there that night, didn't you? And he took it in stride, and he laughed, and he patted me on the shoulder and gave me the Italian Bafangoo. But yeah, and I'm sorry you said Jody Hamilton too, right? What a legend he was. I never saw him live, but he's been in wrestling forever and ever and ever, and I people are just going to go. It's sad. People are going to go. They're going to leave us, and that's like I said, with everything, you know, generations lose their heroes, and I feel sorry for the families of these people, and that's sad. I hope they're all rest in peace.
Yeah. Bob Eaton. I mean, Jim Cornette's podcast episode when he talked about his friend was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was really sad.
If anybody hasn't listened to that, I would highly recommend going and checking that out, because that isn't a shoot, or I mean a work. That is a friend talking about a friend.
Yeah,
And
who traveled up and down the road for years and years together, right?
yeah, exactly, right? And then like Dominic DeNucci, like you said, I know Dominic DeNucci mostly for training Mick Foley
Yep.
and Shane Douglas, right? So like that's how I know the name. But now recently, with the history and the research, I've come to know who like kind of what he did for the business and what he was around. And Jody Hamilton is a local guy, and it's sad, and it's sad that we keep doing this each month. But you know what? I think it's important that we keep doing it, because it's good to reflect and show the respect to the people that we watched and idolized.
Yep. Jody Hamilton wasn't a local guy. He
He
was like
was.
he was from the States somewhere.
Well, look at that.
Yep.
I corrected you last month. You corrected me this month.
No biggie.
Yeah, no biggie. Speaking of biggie, we'll be back with What Are You Watching after the first commercial.
Be sure to follow the Dynasty Wrestling Podcast Network and all of the participating podcasts on social media. The easiest way to find us is on Twitter. You can follow the network at WrestlePods, and you can find all the individual shows at their Twitter accounts. You can find the Wrestling Nostalgia Show at Wrestle Nostalgia, the Ring a Ding Dong Dandy Podcast at Stampede Pod, and the Wildmen Podcast at Wildmen Podcast. Also search us on Facebook for pages and groups. Participate, interact, join the network, and be a fan. Thank you for your support.
Wes, it's really our first time doing this. Like the first time last month was like a surprise to everybody with this segment, What Are You Watching?
Yep.
But I feel like we should truly talk about what we watched. Modern wrestling or old wrestling, whatever what we watched month to month, and kind of talk about some modern stuff. And with that, I want to talk about AEW Rampage, specifically about the CM Punk return.
Okay, go ahead. I unfortunately did not get a chance to see the link that you sent me. I was busy sleeping or taking drugs or something. So knock yourself out. Tell us all about it.
You didn't watch the clip I sent you?
I did not. Sorry.
You lied to me. Do you know who CM Punk is?
It's a guy.
Oh my God.
I do know his name. Yes, I do know his name. I'm not completely ignorant. Yes.
So CM Punk is in my top 10 of all time.
Yeah.
And like out of everybody, bro, he's in my top 10. Hands down, no arguments. He'll always be there. I was one of the fans who was upset that he left WWE, and a lot of drama happened when he left, especially between WWE and CM Punk. Like, it even went to court. He even left, and when he left, he went to UFC, and even like he got his ass handed to him. And then, but like, you know what? Props for him for doing it. But 7 years, Wes.
I know that's crazy.
7 years, the man was gone. But every year, every arena, no matter what company, CM Punk was chanted. Is that not dedication or what?
It's a testament to obviously to his talent, yes. And if it's that important to you, and if he rates that high on your list, what can I say? I'm watching the video now as we speak, and he's just talking in the ring now. So he's getting a standing O. Sure.
Yeah. Well, when you return 7 years and then in your hometown of Chicago.
Yep.
I mean, I loved it, man. I mean, the way they did it, they made him enter. They let it go to commercial. They like it just worked. Everything just worked. You can really tell too how invested the wrestling fans are with CM Punk, how happy he he is being in AEW and making that long overdue return. You know, like especially in his hometown, right? It was fantastic, man. It
Not
gave
too many
me
people.
it gave me goosebumps.
Not too many people can go away for 7 years and come back and get this kind of an ovation at all. Speaks
No,
speaks highly of the guy, obviously.
right? And like he's saying he's back, and when he like said in the ring too, he's like, you know, I wasn't gonna get well or something like that. I can't remember specifically what he said. By the way, our video finally synced. But you know, AEW, man, it's a company to watch. I'm telling you, and like with the rumor that Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, however you want to call him, the Dragon is going to AEW along with CM Punk. I mean, it's WWE, man. They better wake up and do something because this company is gonna blow them out of the fucking water, and that return. It just goes to show that the passion of wrestling fans, like you have to be passionate about pro wrestling to like it. Like you're all in, and everybody always says, "Oh, it's fake, it's fake." Well, guess what? Walking Dead's fake, Breaking Bad's fake. You know, Game of Thrones isn't real. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like the Golden Girls were just 4 actors. Like there's no such thing as in Tony Danza being a model or whatever the hell he was. You know what I mean? Like it's all fake. It's all scripted television. But you still get attached to those characters, and his return proves that his fans are loyal, and I'm one of them, and I'm very excited to see him back. Anyways,
That's good. That's a
yeah.
good thing. And I will definitely be watching any matches that come available to me with him in it.
Yeah. What else I want to talk about, what are you watching, is WWE had one of their big 4 pay-per-views this past month,
Yep.
and it was SummerSlam weekend. Wes, do you know what the big 4 WWE pay-per-views are?
WrestleMania 4,
No,
SummerSlam 4.
no, I said the big
Oh,
4. Like,
no, I don't.
oh my God, you had WrestleMania is part of the big 4.
Yep.
Royal Rumble is part of the big
Royal
4.
Rumble. Yeah, I was going to say that one too.
SummerSlam is part of the big 4,
Yep.
and Survivor Series.
Yeah, I would have gotten them. I've seen them all.
Yeah.
At
Oh,
one time or another.
you've seen every single one?
No.
Come on, dude.
At least one of each. I okay. The match that you sent me to watch was The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. Okay, and
Yes.
I really enjoyed it. I wanted him to get the snot kicked out of him, but they basically kicked the snot out of each other. It was a great match. I really, really don't like Shawn Michaels, but he sold really, really well. It was good to see. I love some of the unique holds they used on each other, and it was pretty damn good. It really was. I did
Yeah.
enjoy it.
That was yeah. So what Wes is saying is the match that I sent him was Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 25.
Yes.
That match is compared to Randy Savage and Steamboat at WrestleMania 3, and saying that some people say that match is better.
Mm-hmm. It was
Um,
good. It was really good. As I said earlier, looking at things through your eyes or the way you see them, and I'm trying to look at them the same way. It's
mhm.
very interesting to look at something completely differently instead of going, "Oh, I hate him. I'm not going to watch his match," or I'm going to go get some popcorn or whatever. You know what? Just sit and take it in. Just envelop it. Enjoy it and take it for what it is. And I did, and I was impressed.
See, Shawn Michaels isn't such a bad guy after all.
I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is about him. He can he can work pretty good in my estimation. He can do moves. He can do what he's supposed to in the ring. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It just it was a good match. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Enjoyed it. Lots of 2 and like 7/8 counts and false finish, not false finishes, but really close pinfalls, and it was a really good match. Undertaker was he was Undertaker, he did. He sprung back a couple times. Shawn Michaels uses agility and some of his youthfulness to jump around a little bit more, but it was good.
Yeah, the next year they went again at WrestleMania 26, and that was Shawn Michaels' retirement match.
Yep.
Career versus streak. It was just as good.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of highly enjoy, though, I did like the SummerSlam weekend that just happened this past month. I'm not going to talk about the whole cards and run down the whole cards, but I'm just going to let everybody know my favorite matches of the NXT, because I know there's a lot of fans that still watch that stuff. So NXT TakeOver 36. I'm gonna go my top three favorite matches. Okay. So Adam Cole versus Kyle O'Reilly. That match was unbelievable. Kyle O'Reilly is a Canadian from British Columbia. It's gonna be interesting because Adam Cole is now a free agent, so he could go to AEW now too. But we'll see. But it's good to see Canadian boy Kyle O'Reilly doing really well in NXT. My second favorite match was Samoa Joe versus Karrion Kross. Samoa Joe became the three-time NXT champion. A little fun fact, I was at NXT TakeOver Toronto 2016 when he became the first ever two-time NXT champion. So he's the first ever, so he was the first ever three-time and the first ever two-time. And I was there for the second one, which is kind of cool. He won the belt off Shinsuke Nakamura. It was awesome. But my favorite match of NXT TakeOver 36 is Walter versus Dragunov. Buddy, oh my God. These guys beat the hell out of each other.
Okay.
Lots of chops, lots of hard hits, lots of slams. It was British strong style at its best. Hands down, I've watched the match twice already. Every time I see it on TV, I try to watch it. It was that good. Their first match was unbelievable. This match was even better. The physicality was unbelievable. I can't express enough. I tried to send you that match, but I can't find it available anywhere yet.
Okay.
Because the match just recently happened.
Mm-hmm.
For SummerSlam, my third favorite match was the women's title match between Charlotte Flair, Rhea Ripley, and Nikki ASH. Wes ASH means almost superhero.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not a fan of the gimmick, but Charlotte and Rhea Ripley, I'm big fans of the women's division. My second favorite match is of SummerSlam this year was Roman Reigns versus John Cena. The Tribal Chief taking on John Cena. John Cena is the modern day Hulk Hogan, in my opinion. The cool thing about that was Brock Lesnar came out at the end. So I think they could go with Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, get Paul Heyman involved because Paul Heyman was the longtime manager of Brock Lesnar. So lots of stuff could happen there. But my favorite match of the SummerSlam weekend was Edge versus Seth Rollins. You know where Edge is from, right?
Yep.
I'm just messing. No, but Edge came out with the Brood entrance and the fire and everything, and the match was just, I don't know. Out of all the matches in SummerSlam, that was definitely my favorite. You know what? It just, I don't know, man. It sucks that I'm trying to get you on board, but sometimes modern wrestling is just so hit or miss. It's some stuff you just love, and then some stuff I just can't stand.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of what are you watching?
Yep.
So the match that you sent me to watch was Superstar Billy Graham versus Dusty Rhodes in 1977 with the Grand Wizard as the manager.
Yep.
Any stories on him?
Well, he was famous in Detroit, Toronto area because he was the manager of the Sheik, in the early 70s. Also, he was a announcer all over the States and Canada. He was an announcer in Calgary for a while. Ohio, was playing two gimmicks at the same time. This is really strange. He was the Grand Wizard in New York and the WWF, and then he was Abdullah Farouk in the Midwest in Toronto at the same time. So he was, and it was a completely different gimmick.
Really?
But he was really good on the stick. He was fantastic on the stick. And there's a match with Tom Jones versus the Sheik that's been floating around on a couple of our Facebook pages. And Abdullah Farouk gets in on the mic with Lord Layton, and it's priceless. But yeah, I'm a huge Superstar Billy Graham fan, only because very colorful, couldn't wrestle very well, but ridiculously colorful, really exciting, and
He's on the juice.
Oh, that's why he wore long tights, because his legs were like skinny, right? They had to hide his legs because he was all like pumped up upstairs. Dusty Rhodes was perfect at that time, just styling and profiling.
Right, the crowd went insane.
Yeah. And he'd only been in New York like 2 or 3 times before that, so they knew who he was from the magazines, right? And if I was gonna point out to you when you're watching it, you can see the back of Bill Apter's head taking pictures at the Madison Square Gardens at ringside. But the magazines made these guys, right? They made these guys, and Rhodes, for whatever he could or couldn't do, as brilliant as he ended up being a booker and everything, the showmanship of these two guys, that's why I wanted you to watch it. The showmanship. They hardly did anything, but like a 12-minute match was so exciting and just really, really interesting. I like the match. I've always liked Superstar Billy Graham. I went to the Gardens in Toronto to see him only time I went there to see just him, and unfortunately he had a leg injury. He no-showed, which was a bummer.
Really, that's a bummer. No, I liked it. I thought Dusty's charisma was cool. Like, he came in the ring with the jacket and the slim movements and moving his feet. I mean, I'm used to a much wider version of Dusty, I should say.
Yeah, he was a little svelte at that time.
Yeah, buddy. It was a good match though. Like, even like the facials, like, this is like, people got to remember 1977, no music, right? So when you're coming out, you hear the boos.
Yeah, exactly.
Graham got booed hard in the Garden, man.
Yep. And he was one of the first WWF heels that was turning. And as we know, Vince McMahon Sr. had these guys as the champions booked for X amount of time. He should have been turned into a babyface. He should have. And then, but he was booked up, to stop in April of 77 or whatever as a champion. And that was it, right? He should have been turned. He had charisma like crazy, and he could talk. Oh my God, he was so good on the mic and for color, not for action.
Well, I don't know, man. I was into the Dusty Rhodes. Like, I like the facials. Like, when he came down with those elbow strikes and the fans every time just blew up. It's like, you had the fans invested. And again, I always have to remind everybody listening, this is pre-internet. This is pre-Facebook. This is pre-social media, video, camera phones. Like, you know what I mean? So it's pre-curtain call. So everyone, like, is still kayfabe. Right? So
100%.
Where were you? 77. Did you remember this happening or the sheets or anything like that?
Way before I ever got or even knew about the sheets. Way before that. There was no sheets in 70. Hardly any sheets in 77.
Really?
Yeah.
When did the sheets start?
I'd say there was fanzines in the 70s, and there was people who knew what was going on to a certain extent. Terry Justice, I don't really know when he started putting things out. Maybe it would have been in the 70s, but I think most of his time frame was maybe 74, 75, and later. So if you got his sheets, you would have seen Dusty Rhodes in New York City, the clipping or the ad, and you would have been, oh my God, Dusty went from Florida or Texas or wherever he was to do spots in New York City, which was pretty cool because guys just didn't. If you weren't a Vince McMahon Sr. guy, you didn't go unless you had like massive pull, right? Which obviously Dusty did.
Yeah.
Yep.
The final What Are You Watching match is our sent in request.
Yes, from our good friend Davin.
Yeah. Bulldog Brower versus Mighty Igor.
And there was a couple of matches on there. I just watched the one I'd seen before, and that was with the old IWA in South Carolina when they were promoting down there, trying to compete with Crockett. They had left the Cleveland, Great Lakes, Buffalo area and traveled down there. They took most of the guys with them. Tons and tons of Ontario and Canadian guys worked with them. This match, it was a disappointment, but it's nice to see Brower going berserk. I love Brower. What a loony bin. Absolute nut bar. Just cuckoo for Cocoa Pops, right?
Yeah, and I love it. You know me, I'm a big Brower guy. I have probably 30 matches documented about him already in my book, ready to be organized from like Toronto to the States and all that stuff. And just to see him, like his movements, his facials, his moving his head, and he's stomping around the ring, he's fighting with the jacket on. Like I don't know which one you watch. I just watched the one Davin sent to me, but
Okay,
I didn't mind it. I thought it was great. I love Brower.
there was the one. I watched the one where he attacks Ivan Kalmakov before the match.
Oh yes, that's the same one I watched.
Okay, yeah. So it just shows the power of a guy who's like 5'8", but about 5'8" around, and you know, like Igor was a gimmick. He could wrestle. I mean, he was like he was a veteran by this time, right? Because Igor started out like as Dick Garza in the mid to late 50s in Detroit. But I liked Igor. Igor was really, really popular everywhere he went. Brower was a nut bar, and he did the Wildman goofball so good. Like his rolling his head, you think his head's going to roll right off his shoulders. And the guy was a tank, man. He was a tank.
Yeah, he was huge. He's like a beast in there.
Yeah.
Well, that's this month's segment of What Are You Watching? Again, I want to remind everybody that we want to know what you guys are watching. So I'd like to again remind all of our friends out there listening, the Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past Facebook group, the Wildman Tribute page Facebook group. We are on Twitter at Wildmen Podcast. You can find me at Wrestle with JCal on or Ontario Wildman Jess on Instagram. I mean, we're everywhere, man. So just find us, get in touch with us. We want to hear stories from wrestlers. We want to hear, we want to help you get your story out. We want to hear stories. We just want to share everything. And, if you can send us matches, then it'll give us a good idea of what more to talk about. Like maybe one of your favorite guys came to Toronto and you didn't even know about it.
And Jess, we got a new a Gmail account now too. That is for everybody. If they want to write this down, get your pen, please, or your typewriter, whatever you're going to use.
I'll get my pen because you finally did this.
Yeah. It's WESJESSE, Wildmen with an E, 1 at gmail.com. Wes Jess Wildmen 1 at gmail.com.
Why'd you pick 1? It should have been 2 because there's 2 of us.
Hey, we're number 1.
Oh my God, this guy kills me. Speaking of number 1, we're definitely not going to talk about number 1. We're going to talk about number 4, which is our episode today. Wes, we're going back. We're talking about a serious topic today, man. We're going, this is for the historians, everyone who loves wrestling history. This episode today that we're going to talk about is for you. September 5th, 1971.
It's a strange time, especially for Frank Tunney to find someone knocking on his door. I think the passage of time was slipped by some. They thought it might have been slipping by, and I think Dave thought that he could move in, and Frank said, "I don't think so. I'm the big shot here. Go away," and he squished him like a bug. But 1971 was this show was September the 5th, which is going to be the air date today. And we were thinking about 50 years ago. 50 years ago, funny enough, there's still some people that are in our groups that were wrestling back then. And Bev Shade, she was on the show, and Ron Donor was on the show. I talked with him the other night. But we were just going to briefly talk about some of the things that were going on in 71, right, Jesse?
Yeah, just to give, I think it's fun to look around what's going on. For example, on November 1st, 1971, the Toronto Sun begins publication. That's kind of cool.
It was a big deal. The Toronto Telegram went under. I was lucky enough to pick up a copy of the last Toronto Telegram, and it had Craig Tunney's clippings in it. That was, what did you say? It was October? November?
November 1st, 1971.
Yeah. A couple people that you might know were born in 71, Jesse.
Oh, here we go.
Val Venus.
Hey, I love Val Venus.
And Biff Naked. Do you know them?
Yeah, I know that. I love myself today, not like yesterday.
Awesome.
Yeah, who doesn't know that song? I'm cool, I'm strong, I'm gonna be okay.
Some of the top songs from that period. She's the Lady by Tom Jones, who I mentioned 2 episodes ago when I made a mistake. Mercy Mercy Me by Marvin Gaye. It's Too Late by Carole King. Won't Get Fooled Again by the Who, which is always called Bubba O'Reilly. And Maggie May, one of my favorite Rod Stewart songs.
Apparently my sister was named Margaret, and they call her Maggie after that song.
Awesome. Good song.
Yeah, but you know what? None of that stuff compares to the top selling album in 1971, Led Zeppelin 4.
Oh, yeah. Dun, 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 dun. Anyway, you know what? We got to say something about Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones, which was released that year also. And Charlie Watt just died, I guess, today.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, 80 years old. That's sad, man. He was a good drummer, man. Like painted black drums. Yeah, I don't know. I like it. I'm a musician, so I loved it.
Totally cool guy. He was the coolest looking guy of the group. I'm not a big Stones fan, but they had some monster hits.
You know what else you're not a fan of?
What?
The 1971 Stanley Cup champions, the Montreal Canadiens.
Really? I don't remember that. Tell me all about the Montreal Canadiens, les Habitants, winning the cup. I remember it. Of course I remember it. I was like glued to the TV. I was a hockey fan. Probably Ken Dryden and probably St. Louis Blues, right?
Well, you should remember all the Stanley Cups they've won, considering you had to watch them win and not the Leafs. Oh, my God. All right, let's take our second commercial, and when we come back, we're going to start putting some context about the relationship between Dave and Frank Tunney.
Grand River Tea is proud to be sponsoring the Ontario Wildmen Wrestling Podcast, produced by Dave Dynasty Podcast Network with Wes and Jess, providing the Ontario wrestling historical content. Grand River Tea is providing their tea of choice, Dropkick Yopon. An ancient plant grown wild in the southern United States, Yopon is the only caffeinated plant native to North America. It has been used by Native Americans and early settlers in North America for decades. It's organic, sustainably wild, harvested, and hand-picked, and is only touched while growing by sunshine and rain. Dropkick Yopon is a medium roast tea that has amazing aroma of maple and a beautiful golden color when brewed either cold or hot. Here at Grand River Tea, we take our sourcing seriously, and we want to reduce our carbon footprint and make our teas as sustainable as possible. All our loose leaf teas are gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free, and have no sugar. So put your kettle on and enjoy some Grand River Tea.
Wes, I think before we actually get to September 5th, 1971, it's important to explain to the listeners who might not know who the Wildmen is.
Sure. It's interesting. We should context this, of course, because there could be people who've never heard of the Wildman, and he went under the Bearman, the Wildman, famous wrestler in Ontario, but also worked all over North America with his first trained bear, Terrible Ted. I'm just going to give you quick Cole's notes here. Had a over 30-year wrestling career, promoted like probably over 1,000 cards in his career. Unfortunately, passed away with the Kellys and Adrian Adonis in the last tour in 1988. But he promoted in Ontario from 1965 to 1988. So that's not too bad. Every summer he hit just about every town in Ontario that had an arena, and most years he was profitable. Some of the guys he had just quickly: Sheik, Andre, Stomper, Mark Lewin, Bobo Brazil, Louis Martinez, Tex McKenzie, Kevin Sullivan, Mark Lewin again. Mark Lewin wrestled for him in the 70s and in the 80s. Angela Mosca Jr. It could go on and on and on.
Nancy Benoit.
Yeah, well, her too. She came out. The Wildman was, and he has been my focus mostly for the last 20 years on researching his career. And I've got piles of paper. I am currently trying to write a book, which is really, really hard to do. But now that we're in my house, we should be a little more focused. He promoted like I said, 1965, he started approximately, and he had some shows in Ontario. I'll just give you a little context. Had some shows leading up to this September 5th, 1971, and I'm just going to name these places. So guess what? No one's going to know these places if you're not from around here. Wingham, Carlton Place, Goderich, and one of his big A towns was London. And he had shows there with his touring troupe of wrestlers. And he had the big idea of taking on Frank Tunney in Toronto, which was a great idea. And he probably thought it was time for him to showcase his talent, but as a promoter, but it was not to happen.
Yeah, and like we've talked about before, Frank Tunney, so to put it in perspective for modern wrestling fans, Frank Tunney is the Vince McMahon of Ontario wrestling.
Yeah, and if you're going to put him up against Vince McMahon, the Wildman was some guy in New Jersey somewhere.
Yeah, he's
basically. Yeah,
a piss hole in the snow.
No comparison whatsoever. A guy who, and Tunney never wrestled, but we're not going to knock that for him because he had a massive career. Had an office in Maple Leaf Gardens. He was famous. He got his pictures in the newspaper all the time. He had a pipeline for the newspaper stories and publishers and sports editors and the Ontario Athletic Commission. And the Wildman, Dave McKegney was his real name. He had to fight for everything he ever got.
Yeah, not to mention too, Frank Tunney had an influence on the NWA with Sam Muchnick too, right?
Yeah, and I just saw a post today. Someone posted the pictures of the 1961 NWA yearly convention was held in Toronto, which was kind of cool.
Wow. I'm kind of curious from my standpoint, Wes, and like I had to when I was thinking about this, I wanted to ask you, when did you first hear about Dave and like the Wildman and like his wrestling bears? Like, was he in the wrestling paper? Like, was he in the sheets? Was he in the fanzines? Like, what's going on?
He where my grandmother lived, just north of Toronto, about an hour and a half. The posters were his iconic posters were the catch. He advertised in local newspapers for his upcoming shows, but the posters were everywhere in southern Ontario. So you got to figure there was no electrical signs on every road. There was no Tim Hortons everywhere. There was no nothing. There was just barbershops and drugstores in little towns, and those posters were sitting in the windows advertising the upcoming shows. They were taped or stapled all over telephone poles leading up all the highways in the area. I remember, I can't even remember. Probably I was 12, maybe even earlier. I remember seeing his posters. They were so colorful, and all you have to do is go to our webpage, the Wildman Facebook page, and you'll see the hundreds and hundreds of pictures of posters that we have there. You cannot ever forget seeing those when you were a kid and knowing about wrestling. He did put on shows in Toronto, but he was only usually at a secondary arena or third or fourth area arena. It was nothing ever big. But yeah, he tried to tackle Frank, and Frank squished him like a bug. Easy, just like that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard when Frank Tunney was like literally the dominance of Ontario wrestling, and I mean, you have the Maple Leaf Gardens. Like, come on, are you kidding me? It's the mecca of Toronto for that, especially for 71.
Yeah, and when we talked about Frank before and some of the guys he had working for him in the different towns, Frank didn't run Windsor, which is the furthest southwest part of Ontario, but he did have a part in Ottawa, which is one of the furthest east cities in Ontario, along with Eddie Quinn out of Montreal. And Frank had guys who worked the whole area. There was right from Niagara Falls to Huntsville, Bob Cajun, not necessarily Sudbury as much, but hundreds of little towns had empty arenas in the summer, and Frank had his agents or his guys running those arenas for weekly or bi-weekly shows in the summer wrestling season. I know you were talking about A towns and B towns and things like that. I know we're skipping a little bit here, but while we're talking about Frank's promoters, Frank had about 4 cities that he ran throughout the year on a regular basis. Kitchener was one of them. Ran from September to the end of the school year. Every week for like 20 years. And then it was about 5 towns like that: London, St. Catharines, Hamilton, Niagara Falls. Oshawa was even better because it was yearly. His reach was incredible, and he must have made just an unbelievable amount of money. I can't see how anyone couldn't, having that stable of wrestlers where throughout the years he could run 2 or 3 shows a night throughout Ontario in the summer months.
Yeah, so I think we should compare too. So it's like Frank Tunney's A-Town is Toronto, Hamilton, Ottawa, right? A B-Town for Frank Tunney would have been Oshawa,
Yeah, or St. Catharines. Yeah.
Yeah, a C-Town probably would have been Bowmanville.
Yep.
Because you guys think in the 70s, Bowmanville probably only had 500 people.
Yeah, they had a zoo though.
Yeah, no, I think they closed it now.
Yeah, it's gone now.
Yeah.
I've been there many times.
But what would you consider Dave McKegney's A towns and B towns and C towns? Like, because they did run the same cities. Like, they both kind of ran London, Because I think would you correct me, please? But I think Dave's A town was London.
Dave's A town was London after Frank stopped working regular shows there.
Really?
So when we talk about all these A, B, C towns for Frank, when for whatever reason, I do not know why, but whatever reason Frank stopped working them, whether his guys got old or they passed away, or like his local promoters, Dave stepped in and Dave started taking them over. And Dave ended up running 100 shows in London from like 1971 to 1986. At 1971, where we're talking today, Dave really didn't have an A-town. He just didn't. He was still running. I don't even know what the word is. Places with an empty arena. Let's put it that way.
Spot show towns, I guess.
Like spot show towns. I mean, but they worked in 71. They worked every night, just about, like 1 week, one night off a week. That was it. They were traveling the whole province. Go, 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 go.
It's important, though, I think that everyone should know that Dave and Frank actually worked together. Like, you know what I mean? They actually got along at some points in time. Dave worked Maple Leaf Gardens with Terrible Ted, right?
Exactly. They had a terrible love-hate relationship. And I think it's based on, like any kind of promotion, money. When everybody's making money, everyone's friends. When people start not making money, no one wants to see anybody else, right? you were the cause of it, or you were this, or you were that. Like, people start blaming things. One of the things that was strange about Frank and Dave was that in the days when insurance rates started going up and Dave couldn't afford his insurance premiums, Frank Tunney lent him his insurance policy to do his shows, which seems absurd. I guys who hated each other and loved each other, they must have had some kind of relationship, because that seems absurd to me. And I think that's been a proven fact somewhere along the line that did take place. I think that was after this took place and after they had fallen off and gotten back together again in the 73, 74 years.
So when did they officially, like, so this is, we're going to talk about this 71. So at this point in time, they're rivals.
Yep.
Or by 73, 74, they work together again?
Yep.
And then when did they break up again?
I guess Dave didn't give Frank a good, nice enough ring. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I know that
ring, not wrestling ring.
I know that the feud lasted years. I mean, it's so popular it even made the it was so popular in Toronto and Ontario, and I'm sure all the wrestling fans knew about it. Like the Dave versus Frank rival, I'm sure all fans knew.
Any real fans knew what was going on, because Dave had tried his hardest to bring in a bunch of stars that weren't necessarily known to all the fans here. Guys from Montreal, guys from Pittsburgh. He had some of his regulars working on the show from his regular touring in 1971. That would have been like Beverly Shade and Tanya West, and he had Chief Little Bear, Gorge George Jr., John L. Sullivan, who turned into Johnny Valiant, who came back to work from years later. So Dave had his regular guys, and he brought in guys from, like I said, Montreal, Pittsburgh, to try to put on a show to create havoc or whatever you want for Frank, and it just didn't go well. I mean, the facts were written out in an newspaper article in the Globe and Mail and in the Star about the two shows going back to back and head to head. Dave probably grossed around $1,500. Frank probably grossed around $55,000. So there's a big difference.
Yeah. And we're going to get into that, all of that. When we come back after our final commercial, we're going to talk about the exact day and everything that happened. Oh my God, this is going to be insane, man. Wait till people hear about what we have to say.
Support all of the podcasts here on the Dynasty Wrestling Podcast Network. The best way to do that is go to our Pro Wrestling Tees store. It is at PROWRESTLINGTEES.com/TheDaveDynasty. There you will find all of the shirts that we offer: I Heart Old School Wrestling, Bruiser Buddy, the Podcast Mask shirt, and of course, the official shirts for the Ontario Wildmen and the Ring a Ding Dong Dandy podcast. Visit ProWrestlingTees.com/TheDaveDynasty, order a shirt, and support the network. If you would also like to support, you can join our Patreon. It's at patreon.com/DaveDynasty. There you will get exclusive audio and video clips, early releases on podcasts, and much, much more. And if you would just like to make one-time contributions to support us, you can go to paypal.me/TheDaveDynasty. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for listening. Continue to support independent wrestling podcast.
Was September 5th, 1971. 50 years ago to the day, a promotional war happened within Ontario, Toronto specifically. Now, we just went over who everybody was and kind of put a little bit of context behind some stuff. Now, I think it's important that to let everyone know that the Bearman ran Varsity Arena. Now, do you know where is Varsity Arena?
It's I don't have the street written down, but it's part of the University of Toronto, I think. The Varsity Blues, which is their football team, play there. and the hockey team plays there. The Toronto Toros from the WHA back in the day, they played there, and the arena's still there. So I mean, it must be functioning somehow, anyways.
Is Varsity Arena the same arena Dory Funk and the Sheik went in?
The Varsity Stadium.
Ah, okay. So it's around this there
Same,
then.
same area, yeah.
Okay.
Varsity Arena is about 5,000 people sell out. Of course, the Gardens we know is could be pushed to about 17,000 for a sellout.
Yeah, and yeah, and that's Frank's building.
Yeah. Guess what? From I don't even know when, 69 to 73, 74, they didn't go much below 14 or 15,000 every week. Every week. My God, I can't believe that. Can you imagine the gross for a year? It was like $50,000 times 30, 40 shows. It's like, oh my gosh, unbelievable money in that time frame.
You and your business.
Frank's tickets were $2.50, $3.50, $4.50, and $5. Dave's tickets were $1, $2, $3, and $4. So that's a big difference. Dave's show had 8 matches with 22 wrestlers, and you can't compare with the big shows that they were having at Maple Leaf Gardens. 11 matches with 34 wrestlers at Maple Leaf Gardens. Anything new on the horizon for these two shows back 50 years ago? For Dave's show, it was obviously Terrible Ted versus Bear versus a Man. Terrible Ted versus Dave, which we understand was a complete gimmick. It wasn't much of a wrestling match, but they went in the ring, they rolled around, they did their stuff. The Bear actually could do moves, which was a hip toss, bear hug, and I think the Bear could do some sort of a leg takedown. So it was kind of interesting. Blackjack Mulligan came up to work for Dave that night from Pittsburgh in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and the WWA. He had been working there. The Hollywood Blondes, who were the first Hollywood Blondes, Jerry Roberts and Dale Hay, who turned into Buddy Roberts from the Freebirds. They came in from Montreal, and they had a mixed tag team with ladies and midgets. And I use the word midget, sorry, midgets or midgets. For Dave, he brought in John Quinn from BC, who was famous here, famous Hamilton wrestler, and he had 2 mixed tag team matches also. The Vachons, Maurice and Butcher, made a rare appearance at Maple Leaf Gardens as a tag team, and I know you have something to say about that.
Yeah, I think it's important to let everybody know that there wasn't a Maple Leaf Wrestling show booked. Dave booked Varsity Arena, and then Frank said, I don't think so, and booked a show.
Yeah.
Right? So, this is legit a man who just booked Toronto to see if he could do it, and then another promoter playing Mafia and saying, nah, I don't think so. We're not letting this go down.
And we're not sticking up for the Wildman. We're just expressing the facts, and it was Tunney's town. No doubt about it. You can pick at whatever. Sheik stayed too long, blah 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 blah. This is 1971. Sheik was so hot he could do no wrong whatsoever. It was Frank's town. It was just Frank's town, and eventually, Dave did start promoting in Toronto at the Scarborough Arena, and that was from 73, 74 on. It was a 1,000-person arena. It was sold out all the time, but that was about the only place that he was able to put a show on.
Yeah, I mean, when you say it's Frank's town, Frank owned it, and everyone's going to say, "Oh, how could he do that?" Okay, well, I'm sorry, but Vince McMahon did the same thing. What Frank did, Dave booked Varsity Arena. Frank was like, "No, I'm not having that. This is my town." He threw a random one-off, meaning one show. He just randomly threw a show together. And what did he do? Exactly what you said he did. He brought in the Sheik. Now, I think it's to put perspective for modern wrestling fans. Using the Sheik in 1971 in Toronto is like Vince McMahon bringing around Hulk Hogan trying to take over the territories in the 80s.
Exactly, 100%, exactly the same. They, Frank never had any opposition in Toronto. Anything that went on in Toronto it was very, very, very small. Red Garner ran around Toronto in the 50s. Cannon tried to work the CNE in the later 70s. Everyone was squished. Everyone was squished. It was a stupid idea to try to book Toronto. Frank owned it. He never had hardly any opposition. Um, he only let the guys use small arenas, if he even let them, because he had control with the newspapers. He had control with the Ontario Athletic Commission on whether guys would get their promoter's license or not. So I love the Wildman's promotion. I love everything about him, but this was just stupid. He lost his shirt, and that's from a lady wrestler who was there. Bev Shade told me he lost his shirt. Probably took him a whole year to recoup the funds he lost on that show.
Well, didn't out of a 4,000 seater, didn't only like 400 or 600 people show up?
Yeah, it was reported around 500 or 700. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you didn't even get 1,000 in a 4,000 seater.
Yeah,
And like you said, I read it on SlamNet, and I talked to you, and I talked to AC about it. But he did Frank Tunney sent Butcher Vaughn to the arena, varsity arena.
Yeah, he sent Butcher Vachon into the arena as a masked guy to try to scare some of the crowd, probably because he wanted to find out A, how many people were there, and B, see if he could raise some shit. And that was, you think about it, Jesse, Vince McMahon did step over all the territories. He just took the TV out from underneath them, or the arenas out from underneath them. He did it his way, and this was
the talent.
This was just the way back in 1971 that the guys did it. Right or wrong, they did it, and Frank was 100% protecting his territory.
I just don't know, when Dave booked Varsity Arena, Dave booked it in advance.
Yeah, he would have had to book it probably 3 months in advance, at least 2 months in advance. And he had worked the whole summer touring Ontario, so he was building up to this, bringing in guys from other territories so that he would have some new faces. Reggie Parks was on the card from Montreal.
A guy bailed on the Bear Man too to go to work for Tunney because Tunney booked all the talent.
Yeah, and Parisi hadn't worked in Toronto for years and had worked for Dave off and on every summer for about 2 or 3 years. And Tony shows up on the next Maple Leaf Garden show. Nothing wrong with Tony. He's looking after himself too, right?
Yeah, you got to think wrestlers in 71 are independent contractors, right? I guess they kind of still are in a way.
They're looking out for themselves in their pocketbook. Yep, 100% for sure.
How much money do you think Dave lost?
I bet Dave lost $5,000.
Is this going to be in your book?
Yes, the story's in my book. Yes, with the ads from the show, and I think I have a poster from the show too, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's going to be in the book. It's a really interesting topic, and we have to put it into perspective. It wasn't last year. It wasn't in the 80s. It wasn't, it was 50 years ago. The world in professional wrestling world certainly was a lot different back then.
Oh, yeah. Territories, NWA. It was dog eat dog, really. Like, you had to buy into territories and stuff like that. And you got to think, too, if you go back to our episode 1, Frank Tunney was running the Maple Leaf Gardens since, pretty much 39, 40?
Yeah, the early 30s, yeah. After Jack Corin passed away, and then left it to Frank's brother John, and then Frank took it over. So 40. So it's would you not do the same? Would I? Of course we would, right? We would.
Yeah, well, 31 years promoting in Toronto, and then some guy comes in and books in your city. You're like, what the hell?
Yep, and Frank had the means to squish him like a bug, just like he did.
Do you think hindsight being 2020, Dave would try that again?
I don't think so. He was dirt under the fingernails kind of businessman, and not saying anything bad about him. It's just a different kind of person altogether. Like I said, Frank never wrestled. Frank was always in a suit. I don't think Dave. I'm being facetious. Dave probably didn't own a suit. He did, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Two different kind of guys. The cards were crazy stacked in Tunney's favor, unless you were a true fan and you wanted to see someone on Dave's show. But you're looking to go out on a Sunday night to go to a wrestling show. Who are you going to pick? You're going to pick a show that you have, you don't know any of the guys, or you only know one or two of the people, or you're going to go see the Sheik versus Big John Quinn, who you've seen on TV for years, right, out of Vancouver.
Did you ever see Big John Quinn?
Just on TV.
And you saw the Sheik, right?
Yep.
Did you see him at a Wildman show or a Tunney show?
At the Wildman show.
Yeah. See, it's crazy, man. 1971, the Sheik's working for Tunney. You know what I mean? He's the biggest thing going in the 70s for Toronto wrestling.
The biggest thing going in the 70s practically everywhere.
Really, eh?
Headlining Japan, headlining Honolulu, headlining Los Angeles, headlining Texas, of course, his own territory, everywhere, all over Michigan, all over the Great Lakes, Cleveland, Toledo, Buffalo. He was huge. He was so huge. If his name was on a card, a poster, or an advertisement, it meant there was going to be lots of people there. Hence why, while when Sheik started working for Dave in '74, hence why Wildman could start pulling in some big bucks too, because when Sheik started working for Dave, his crowds went way up.
Really?
Yeah.
It shows that in your numbers?
Oh, definitely. And we know that even though Sheik was still working for Tunney, Sheik was a businessman. And I think Sheik was really egocentric and wanted to show his wares to whoever he could, and it didn't matter where it was. Dave paid him his 5% guarantee or whatever it was, and Sheik took the money.
Yeah, I mean, you don't leave money on the table, I guess, right?
That's right.
Is there, with the cards and like everything going on like that, when's the next? I know you said that Dave ran Scarborough. I don't consider Scarborough Toronto. I think it's part of Durham region, but then they moved it back to Toronto. I don't know. It's weird.
It's a borough of Toronto ever since it's been made. But that's not the point. The point is that you're on the outskirts, right? In '75, some wrestling guys came in from Toledo, and they were running Mimico Arena and Lakeshore Arena, which Dave ran also. These are like 1,000 people at the most arenas.
Really?
Maybe 1,500 if you pack an extra couple of rows of ringside seats. Frank had no problems because these guys weren't even going to touch him. They weren't going to touch his weekly shows, his weekly paycheck, his bi-weekly paycheck. When he finally started going every 2 weeks. The
Tunney Sports Enterprise across the province, man.
Some of the Tunney shows that were leading up to this, I mean, in the summertime, Tunney was running all the holiday areas, but still he ran in late July in Owen Sound, Ontario. Maple Leaf Garden shows leading up to this show. Bobo Brazil versus the Sheik, Dewey versus Big John Quinn because they had to get Quinn over as a killer. Guy Mitchell versus the Sheik, and Guy Mitchell was another Canadian guy who was the stomper in different areas. Not the stomper of Calgary fame, but the stomper. And in Detroit, just a couple nights before, most of these guys had all worked that were working for Tunney. They had all worked in Detroit for the Sheik, as was the case. Basically doing, I think it was a Saturday night or Friday night show in Detroit, and then coming to Toronto for the Sunday night shows.
What do you think September 5th, 1971 will always be remembered for in pro wrestling history? For Ontario, at least.
I think hopefully we've enlightened some people on that Frank did have some opposition. This particular case wasn't good opposition. It was still opposition. It was still someone trying to run against him. Dave pulled out all the shots to try to go up against Frank. And like I said, over the years, yeah, Frank used Dave. He used Dave in the late 70s on lots of cards. He used Dave's cage in some of the A or B and C towns.
His wrestling bears.
The Bears, they Smokey wrestled for Frank, not wrestled for Frank, but wrestled for Frank Tunney, his promotion. Yeah. Complete love-hate relationship. I just think 1971, like, why would he have? I talked to two people that were on the show. Ron Donor, who still is living in Newmarket, was one of the Wildman's best friends back in the day, and he couldn't remember anything special from the show, which was unfortunate. I also talked to Beverly Shade about it, and she couldn't remember anything other than she knew because she was living with Dave at the time. Not living with him, but bunking with him on the tour at her house with Dave's wife. She remembered that Dave lost his shirt and he was pissed. How could you not be pissed by doing something which we look at back at now and go, that was just utterly stupid, right? But he tried. You can't say the Wildman never tried. He kept trying. He kept going. He kept moving on, and that's why he lasted so long. And that's why, to a certain degree, over his career, he made money. He did.
Yeah, it's not Frank Tunney money because at the September 5th show, Frank Tunney pulled 15,000 or 16,000, didn't he?
Yeah, he probably made about $60,000 gross.
Yeah,
and Dave probably grossed about $1,500.
And probably paid all the talent and lost money from the building and all that.
Yeah, the building probably cost $1,000 easy without anything else. I'm sure it was more, but I'm just guessing $1,000, $2,000 plus attendance, ringside guys, ticket takers, blah 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 blah. Right?
That's insane, man.
Yeah.
It's just crazy because it's like now with indie wrestling and all these promotions in Ontario and the independent scene, you got to think, hey, maybe there's still some promotional rivals going on in the independent scene in 2021. Maybe that stuff never goes away. I don't know.
I would imagine that it probably is going on still to a certain degree in a very, very small club kind of way. Yeah. I know I've been to a few CWO shows with Davin, and his promotion, he doesn't want someone promoting in the next bar down the street from him. That's not what he wants. And there's enough room here. There's enough fans. I mean, look, you're going to get 100 people or 150 people. Like, just be happy with it, right?
Exactly.
How many people did they pull at the shows that you were at?
Well, because of COVID, it's only 100, right?
Oh, so they were only allowed 100.
Yeah, because of COVID-19, they had to follow the health restrictions, right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I forgot about that for a second.
Yeah.
One quick thing I wanted to mention that I was really delving deep into researching what was going on around this time in 1971. I gotta say these couple things here. Hilarious House of Frankenstein started in 1971. You know that show?
No.
Oh, man. Okay, that's cool. There was a really cool hockey movie put out that year called Face Off, and it was a Toronto-based movie, and it was a love story. And Jim McKenney, who was a player for the Leafs, played all the on-ice parts of the famous actor who was the lead role in it. That was a really, really cool movie, and all people at my age, we all went to the movie theaters to see that movie. And okay, here's one. It's going to freak everybody out. I don't know how I found this. I just was digging. There was an experimental film, okay? It was called an experimental film. And It was called The Neon Palace. I have no idea what it's about. And there was a character in the movie called King Clapper, and he was played by Sweet Daddy C-Key.
Oh wow.
I know. I don't even know how I came upon that, but I did. This is really, really strange.
uh, more facts with Wes.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about the Frank Tunney versus Dave McKegney rival, there's an article about it on MapleLeafWrestling.com, I'm pretty sure. And there is definitely one on SlamWrestling.net by Andrew Calvert and Greg Oliver. This rival was so popular, it even made the book Drawing Heat.
It did, and it was a big part of Dave's life. In the book, he didn't talk too much about it, but he did say that in the book, the by the time by the time Drawing Heat was written, again, they were in a hate relationship as opposed to a love relationship. So
Yeah, exactly.
there was not any love lost there by the time when the professor was traveling with the troupe, wrestling troupe, and writing all his notes down for the book Drawing Heat, which I still recommend people. Scott Teal puts out a fantastic copy of it, an updated version. It is one of the most coolest books to read. The section with the Sheik talking is bizarre, to say the least.
Yeah, right. I read it in 2 days.
I've read it 1,000 times. If ask my wife.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Again? You reading that book again? She's
Hey,
laughing.
don't mock her. She's in the room behind you. Well, that was another episode of the Ontario Wildmen. Wes, we got a big episode coming next month.
We do. It's going to be another exciting historical learning curve for both of us as we do our research on
Whipper Watson.
famous whipper Billy Watson. That was funny the other
Whipper
day.
Billy Watson.
We were chatting with a fellow friend of ours on Messenger, and you got mistaken for a second, and you got absolutely flipped out.
Yeah, well, you guys are talking about a Watson, and you guys are saying all this stuff, and I'm like, what the hell? Oh, this guy was like, and then you're like, no, we're talking about this, not the senior, and I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
never mind then.
It's going to be so much fun doing. I've started some research on Whipper already. It's going to be really interesting to put into context for our fans here the many decade wrestling career of Whipper Billy, and not even to touch on the stuff that he did outside of the ring, right?
Yeah, exactly, and we're going to try to cover it all. It may even turn into 2 or 3 parts, because there's a lot to talk about, especially considering when it comes to Ontario, like, wrestling, he's a huge part of it. Legendary status, and we're going to talk about it all next month. To get a hold of us, and I really recommend everybody get a hold of us. Send us in questions, send us in matches that you want us to watch for What Are You Watching, anything wrestling related that you want.
Topics for podcasts, anything.
Yeah, we've got a couple topics already requested by a couple of us, so I mean, hey. And like I said at the top of our show, our Facebook groups are growing extremely fast. Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past, the Wildman Tribute page, both are on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter at Wildmen Podcast. That's at WILDMENPODCAST. Our Facebook groups are pinned to the page of our Twitter, so it's easy to find the profile pics. Also, we have an email. Wes made an email. He's so happy about his new email he made.
And he wrote all the information down so he wouldn't forget. Because I've done about 6 of them.
What is it? Wes Jesse Wildman1 at hotmail.com?
Yep.
So that's Wes Jesse Wildman1 at hotmail.com. So you could email us questions, videos, anything you want us to watch for. What are you watching? Wes, you want to talk about your contest?
We're going to be doing a contest coming up. We haven't finalized anything yet, but I'm excited to be giving stuff away. So we're going to be talking more about that next month. I think we're going to have some T-shirts and maybe some beer cozies, and I think some printed vintage material for the fans.
Hopefully, we're gonna get all that together. I'm gonna let everybody know who's listening. If you are an Ontario independent promotion, we do have flyers, and we're just looking for support of our show. If you want to hand out our flyers at our show, and if I can't make it, I can't drive 18 hours through a city. I can mail you the flyers, and if you can just help us support the history of Ontario wrestling and keep it alive with the Ontario Wildmen podcast, that'd be great. Contact us through any of the contacts that we just mentioned. I can get you flyers. I'll pay for the shipping, everything, as long as you just hand them out at your shows. If you're local within the GTA, by all means, get in touch with me, or I'll get in touch with you, and maybe we can work something out to help promote the Ontario Wrestling History Podcast, which is us, Wes and Jess, the Ontario Wildmen.
Exactly. I would drive down on the weekend to help you out, but it's just a tiny bit too far from 60 Captain Kennedy.
Yeah, you're in Manitoba. There's no chance. Wes, it's a pleasure, my friend. I can't wait to see you next month and do this all again when we talk about Watson, buddy.
It's going to be great, and I'm looking forward for the research that we're going to do, and I'm really looking forward to helping educate and show the fans something that teach them and show them something they might not know about a Canadian wrestling god, two-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion also.
Yeah, owner of a territory at one point in time, too. There's going to be lots to talk about. All next month on the relaunch of the Dave Dynasty Network, and we're so happy to be part of that relaunch.